Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Today on this episode, let's talk about treble hooked baits. So like this lipless crankbait here, these type of baits really are known for missing and losing more fish than, say, a worm presentation. Usually with a worm presentation, you can kind of give that fish more time before you set the hook, which means that you can get the slack out and all of that, which I think is kind of the major contributor to the fact that you lose less fish with worms. But whatever the case is, lipless crankbaits, diving crankbaits, jerkbaits, topwaters, they tend to lose a little bit more fish than jigs or worms do. So so one of the things that you can do to dramatically increase your hook to land ratio with treble hook baits is swapping out the treble hooks. I mean, pros talk about it all the time, and it's not because we're just trying to sell treble hooks for these hook companies. It's because it is legitimately one of the most important things that you need to do with all treble hooked baits. And so I'm going to tell you exactly why that is the case. So first off, I always swap out treble hooks on the baits that I'm using. Now, when I say always, sometimes that means right out of the package, because there's plenty of great crankbaits that just have terrible low quality treble hooks on them right out of the package. And so I'm going to automatically just swap those low quality treble hooks, those cheap, inexpensive treble hooks that manufacturers put on there, with premium treble hooks. Okay. But there are also baits that right out of the package, they have great treble hooks on them. However, after just a little bit of use, those are going to dull, especially if you're using it with a deep diving crankbait or some type of crankbait that is making contact with the bottom. The more contact you have with the bottom, the faster your hooks are going to dull. And so it doesn't matter if the crankbait comes with good hooks or not. I'm going to be swapping them out either right away or pretty soon after using them the first time. So why are treble hooks so much more problematic for hooking and landing fish than, say, like a worm presentation? So worm presentations, number one, are used on very different tackle in general. Now, there is a lot of overlap. Like with my topwaters, I'll use like a similar rod that I use for worm fishing. But in general, with crankbaits and jerkbaits and treble hook baits in general, you're using more parabolic bend rods. Okay, so rods that flex a little bit more. They're a little bit more whippy. They're not as stiff. Okay, so they don't take slack out of the line very efficiently. Okay, compared to like a medium heavy fast action or extra fast action rod that we would use for worm fishing. So that's one thing. Another thing is with reaction baits, a lot of times you're using lighter pound test rating. So the lighter the line, actually more stretch you get at the length of a cast. And so that's another reason right there, is the fact that you're also adding a little bit more stretch. You're usually using fluorocarbon, maybe monofilament, and so there's a lot of stretch there, as opposed to worm fishing, which you're using heavier line in general. And, also you can just let those fish eat a worm and just kind of, get that time to take the slack out and then jack those fish. So very, very different as far as the tackle and the way that you set the hook. And it's also different as far as how the fish eat the baits. So like I said, with a worm, a fish can eat the bait. You can feel that little tick. You can wait a second while you get all the slack out, and then you set the hook. With reaction baits, you're essentially, it's all one motion. You feel, the line get heavy, the bait get heavy, and then you just lean back into them. And a lot of times the fish are either just swiping at the bait, so they're not really, choking it down, or, they're pretty sluggish. Like this time of year, cold water, the fish are a little bit more sluggish. So if you're fishing a little bit too fast, sometimes they'll miss that bait or just get hooked on the outside of the mouth, which is something that you never want to see when you're fighting a big fish. So changing out the hooks, no matter how you look at it, is very, very important. So the hooks that I like to change to are the Hayabusa TBL 930s. And there's actually something special about these 930s. They come in two different finishes. You've got the traditional, black nickel finish that's kind of a shiny black coloration. And then you have these, which I am more and more switching all of my crankbaits to. This is the same hook, but with the NRB coating that they offer. And that NRB coating, the best way to put it is it's pretty much like Teflon. Okay, it reduces friction. And when you have something that reduces friction like that, not only do you have the needle sharp hooks that are going to aid in getting a good hook set, but with the NRB coating, you get less friction that allows you to get a better hook penetration with less force, which is always really, really important. So these are the ones that I like to actually use. And in fact, they're doing a sale right now on the Hayabusa website, and I've got a link in the description below if you want to get 30% off of these hooks. These are pretty amazing hooks. So anyways, changing out your hooks with premium treble hooks and checking them often. Like if you don't have a hook that is easily catching on your thumbnail or fingernail in general, if it's not like sticking, if it doesn't feel sticky, it's not sharp enough anymore. That's kind of the test, is like if I take a crankbait out of the box and I feel it and it doesn't stick to my nail, I'm going to be swapping that out. Absolutely, because that just means that I'm going to miss some opportunities. It may not be a lot of opportunities, but it may be a very important opportunity throughout the length of a day. So, and also, even if you have brand new treble hooks, if you just keep them in your box, rattling around with all the different crankbaits, they'll dull in that situation too. So it's like, it's kind of a never-ending battle with treble hook baits. You really do need to stay on top of the sharpness of them, more so than worm presentations, things like that. Because I can fish a worm hook, with a Texas rig that's a little bit duller and has a rolled point, because we're using those stiffer rods. We get the slack out better, and I don't have that bad of a hooking percentage or landing percentage with that compared to treble hooks. But you just don't have that luxury with treble hook baits. The last thing I want to mention is, like, when you're swapping out these hooks, do you want to stick with the same exact size that came with that bait, or do you want to swap it up a little bit, go up in size or down in size? That is a question that I get from a lot of people, and it really depends. So one thing that I found is baits like suspending jerk baits, you absolutely do not want to play around too much with with different size hooks with those baits, because usually the factory has tuned those baits perfectly, and you really want to stick as close as possible to the same style and size hooks as came on that bait, because you don't want it to sink fast or start floating. You don't want to just change the action. So be very, very careful when you're swapping out hooks on jerk baits. But with something like a lipless crankbait, or like a walking topwater bait, I can upsize like quite a bit with my hooks. Like usually with this bait right here, I think these are probably 4s on there right now, size 4s. But I can go up to a 2 with a lipless crankbait, and it really doesn't affect the action all that much. It may affect it just very minutely, but in general, I'm still going to get a lot of bites with a bait that I upsize to a size 2 or something like that. And often I like to do that when I'm fishing around grass. You'd think that I want to downsize to snag less, but really when I'm fishing around grass, I feel like a fish has more opportunity to miss the bait, because they're having to deal with all kinds of cover variables. So I like to have bigger hooks in general in those scenarios. But When in doubt, just change out the hooks with the same size hooks. But a lot of diving crankbaits, especially deep diving crankbaits and lipless crankbaits, and some topwaters, I can definitely upsize my hooks. You just got to experiment with a little bit and test it before and test it after. So anyways, guys, just wanted to share this information for you. If you've been wondering whether or not you should be changing out your treble hooks, the answer is absolutely. I also got another question recently from somebody asking if they could just sharpen their treble hooks, and absolutely. However, the more you take a stock hook and you start sharpening it, the quicker the edge, the point is going to be compromised. It's gonna start, getting duller and duller very fast. And so that's why I don't even play with it anymore. I used to carry a Dremel tool with me and sharpen my hooks with some type of Dremel stone on there, and that used to work good for me when I was in college and couldn't afford to buy a bunch of treble hooks to replace on my baits. But nowadays, I don't want to mess with any of that. I just want the best hooks possible. And again, if you guys are interested in the TBL 930s, on Hayabusa.com right now, HayabusaFishing.com, they've got that 30% off if you use the link that I have in the description below. So stock up on these hooks while you can get 30% off. Anyways, guys, thank you guys so much for watching. I always appreciate all the feedback you give. So if you have any questions or comments, drop a comment below. Make sure you like, share, subscribe. Other than that, I'm going to see you out on the water. Trust the process.